We as a society function in a commonplace way. We live with our families, we go to the school in our town, we find a college that suits us, and we find a lover who we hope to be the one. Over time, we enhance our own beliefs, rather our idiosyncrasy, meaning that we stay in the same mentality and state that we believe what is righteous to us, regardless of our repercussions. This is what we know to be the status quo. To elaborate, the status quo refers to the existing state of affairs or the current condition of something, especially in relation to a particular system, situation, or state of circumstances. It's basically how things are at the moment before any changes are made. People like me often use it to describe a situation where things stay the same over time, or when there's resistance to change. It reminds me of that Disney song.
Bang on furniture, and then for no reason everybody's going to walk around the tables and we stop. Tummy ache and this and this and this and wee. And we point and yell at the wall.
Yeah. Some people in the media are unwilling to change due to how suitable they are in their environment as well as how around them. They want to maintain their beliefs and reputations because they speculate that doing so will result in being the best person that they could be. This realistically isn't quite true because people need to change direction to overcome big obstacles that would make them better people than they ever knew they could be. I want to deconstruct this controversial idea in this essay because it makes me wonder how I and you as viewers can observe status quos to improve our lives. Before beginning, I once again want to thank everyone for tuning in to my last video essay. I was not expecting the turnout for that one episode of Double Dare 2000 to do so well, and that I was willing to accept some criticism for my section of the coincidentally overlapped audio for the engagements, along with exaggerated stances of the downgrades for the franchise, and that some nostalgia is able to be let go with the occasional memories in there. I appreciate the support and growth to help me get to this essay, so let's initiate. If you grew up on a channel such as Cartoon Network, let alone Boomerang, chances are that you knew exactly what was coming to you. And I ain't talking about the automated schedule, although that may be a topic for another day, but what that content contained. You got cartoons like Looney Tunes, with Bugs Bunny, Tweety and Sylvester, Roadrunner, and then stuff like Tom and Jerry, Popeye, Scooby-Doo, Yogi Bear, and Wacky Races. What do all these tunes have in common? Well, it's quite simple. They are all cartoons of formula. As you watch more of these cartoons, the more predictable that each one comes, and thus you'll know what their respective status quos are. Bugs outwits Elmer or Yosemite Sam, Tweety defeats Sylvester, Roadrunner escapes Coyote, Jerry demolishes Tom, Popeye punches out Bluto, Scooby-Doo and his gang unmask the perpetrator, Yogi is denied the picnic baskets, and Dastardly and Muttley come in last place for their cheating efforts. Back in the early days of animation, story was much less of the focus, and instead, gags and references and one-liners were what kept the audience enticed. Studios like Famous Studios, Warner Brothers, and Hanna-Barbera all had to rely on the rinse and repeat format for their cartoons, especially if that is what made them commercially successful, regardless of the eventual criticism. If they knew a formula would get a laugh, then it didn't need any changing. However, there were instances where the formula was directly addressed in the tunes, and they tried being experimental with them.
Good evening, madam.
Oh, how charming.
Hey, what's this, a handout or something? Huh?
It's the natural thing to do. It's the natural thing to do.
But we're jumping the gun here.
Oh, now really get going there.
It's the natural.
When the trend of theatrical cartoons started winding down, people of the crew were trying their best to keep the theater goers happy, whether it be a slight twist of the formula or a completely different story or an adaptation of another work with these characters as replacements. The writing was truly on the wall for all of these series. In the late 50s, when most of these tunes inevitably came to the small private screen, kids were overjoyed to see their favorite cartoons once again, and seeing their favorite characters outwit or intake in violence, no matter how monotonous it may have been for the crew to keep filling in those blanks. Syndication played all these cartoons so easily on Sundays and Saturdays, and by the time that the 2000s hit, corporate loved their own status quo of keeping their cartoon formulas the same. Sure, we were young and dumb when Boomerang aired their series of formats on autopilot for years on end, but as we grew older, we didn't want this format anymore. We wanted content with good stories and engagement rather than a Mad Libs-esque visual program. This applies to some live-action shows as well, like Kenan and Kel. They can't get rich, they can't get a new home to themselves, they can't get a new job, they can't even get out of any normal trouble. However, that show utilizes it so successfully thanks to the titular duo's ability to capitalize on their awesome physical comedy to get there.
Come on, Kenan! Come on! Come on! My head is stuck! Huh? My head is stuck! Your head is stuck? Yes! My head is stuck! Stuck is my head! My stuck head is! His head is stuck! Which one of those words don't you understand? Well, I understand all those words. Well, then good. Then you understand I have a problem here, you oddity.
Not to mention the big audience engagement throughout the show, as well as the big bookends on each episode.
Wow. Thank you. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. For those of y'all that don't know, my name is pronounced Kenan. Yeah, thank you. Wow. Thank you. And for those of you that do know, my name is pronounced Kel. Thank you. Wow. All right, we got a slamming show for y'all tonight. I mean, we've got action, we've got intrigue, we got dance and music. Hey, why you stop the music? Because, Funky, this is no time for dancing. But I gotta dance. Oh. Well, then save it for tonight's show. Now, come on, stop it. Kenan, I'm not stubby. And why do you always have to call me funny names? Kenan, here it goes.
And that's a big reason why it's such a quintessential show in the world of comedy. There are many instances where staying on the status quo proves to be for the worst, and I would like you to join me in viewing some of those examples. One of the most infamous examples of keeping the status quo wherein it doesn't work is Sylvester and Hippity Hopper. While it would make sense for Tweety to outwit the cat due to how small he is, thus making him an underdog to create a good subversion initially, Hippity's cartoons are too predictable. In these instances, he comes across from wherever the hell. Sylvester mistakes him for a giant brown mouse, but given how much larger Hippity is, he decimates Sylvester before he can realize that Hippity is in fact a kangaroo, and regardless of the setting and resolution, Hippity is the victor. The status quo Sylvester losing does not work because aside from being small and, well, dumber, Hibbity has no real personality or motivation, so having him win every time and being the recipient of the good end of the status quo feels wrong and impractical. His innocuous exterior is not enough for viewers to want to be invested on his side. So these cartoons are not only formulaic, but ultimately turn out pretty boring with their episodic structures. The episodic nature of animation continues as time progresses, including adult shows like American Dad, Family Guy, and of course, The Simpsons. In a very infamous Season 9 episode, Principal Skinner is revealed to have been an imposter as a new man named Skinner takes his place. What this all builds up to is suspense, shock, and disbelief because this is a character who we grew to know for 8 years regardless of how cruel he may be. He was a compelling, strict, yet entertaining man to view for so many episodes, but seeing him try reverting everything feels like a punch in the face because of how ill-timed and sudden this all is. Now this might seem confusing. This sounds like a change of the status quo, but it isn't. The new guy realizes that being a principal wasn't worth anything, and Skinner promptly retreats to the education facility once again, restoring the status quo. When I watched this, I knew Skinner would return, but to do that, he would have had to show emotional depth, honesty, and true grit to get his position back. But that doesn't happen at all in this episode. He just comes back because the plot demands it, and the rest of the series virtually ignores everything that happened. If they really wanted the status quo to be done right, then the new principal could have been lasting throughout the season, given that this was the second episode of the 9th one, and we had some time to understand his struggles and see his interaction with the characters, and eventually he comes to realize that he isn't fit on his own terms and makes amends with the real Skinner to help him return. This real episode, it felt like a joke, and thus made retcons on Skinner totally useless, like it was completely random thought by the writers that was put on a whim. It had absolutely zero value to the show, let alone Skinner as a person. Now you might be thinking the status quo is exclusive to episodic shows. Nope. It happens to serialized content as well. Take a look at As Told by Ginger's 3rd season episode, Dodie's Big Break. In this story, Ginger comes back from the hospital after an appendicitis surgery, which I've also talked about if you may remember. And she's harassed by many people around her, including her, quote, best friend, Dodie, who insists that Ginger see her cheerleading performance despite how weak she is. In her performance, Dodie falls down and it appears that she's gravely hurt. But instead, Dodie unintentionally reveals that she was faking it all along to guarantee a spot in the cheer squad anyway. Macy and Ginger oversee this, and Ginger attempts to sell her out, like I honestly was really expecting from her. Trying to grow the strength back from her surgery, the coach kicks Dodie off the team, and she is devastated without realizing how selfish, stupid, and petty she was being. She comes back whining to Ginger that she regrets everything that she's done to her. This implicitly includes, but not limited to, exposing Ginger's then secret that her mom wouldn't let her shave her legs, trying to steal her part in the school play to kiss a cute boy, trying to sabotage her and Darren's romance when they were ignoring her, despite the fact that she encouraged it in the first place. Amidst everything, Ginger, whom you'd expect to cut ties with Dodie for how awful she is, instead goes to the head coach and demand her to put Dodie back on the team because she really wants it. She then reluctantly agrees, and Dodie is proud to still be Ginger's friend. Ugh. Status quo in this situation is that Ginger and Dodie are BFFs no matter the circumstance, but I expected this to be after Dodie did something that was actively selfless and mature. Nothing like this happened, and people make the clear argument that Courtney was supposed to be Ginger's new BFF, even lover, but that was nothing but pure fan bait. The whole season arc played like this. Ginger visits an exclusive school for the winter. Dodie misses her and commands her to come back. She does, and when she finds out that Ginger is dating Darren and ignoring her, Dodie tries to split them up, but Ginger realizes her plan too, thanks to Courtney. Ginger has a boring, saccharine adventure with Courtney at a local fair, and thus finds that she's too attached to the little things in life and walks away from Courtney. And Dodie becomes the most selfish girl to Ginger, and she still stands up for her, all because Ginger is kind of confused. The episode should really be called Ginger's Surrender, because everyone just gave up on the story. Now that we've gotten some of the most egregious examples of the wrongs, let's take a look at the rights.
When it comes to positive instances of the status quo remaining intact, we want this to be the case when there is a bond that keeps the characters mentally strong and wholehearted. It is a constant that keeps the show great and what makes us tune into the show to begin with. A good example is iCarly's 5th episode, I Wanna Stay with Spencer. After a near accident on their latest episode of their web show, Grandfather Shay comes by to inform Spencer that he's not responsible enough to take care of Carly, but she objects, saying that he's the best brother that any kid could have. After several botched instances of responsibility, it seems to affirm that Carly can't be in Seattle any longer, but then Spencer shows a big light of maturity.
You forgot this.
What's that?
My asthma inhaler? I haven't had an asthma attack since I was 7.
Well, yeah, but you never know.
Why did you keep that all these years?
In case you needed it.
I'm not gonna need it.
Take it.
This big act of responsibility is significant enough that their grandfather lets them stay after all. The status quo acts perfectly here, in that not only are Carly and Spencer's sibling dynamic fun, unique, and entertaining, but Spencer escapes his careless antics to ensure proper nurturing to his sister. There's even an instance midway through the episode where there's a funny subversion on how he reacts to Carly's makeover. You'd think that he'd call her off and punish her, but he acts to like it because he argues that teenagers shall be free to express themselves, and that is indeed a good point. The point of this all, though, is that Spencer realizes to maintain the big status quo he had to adjust his own reputation as a man-child to actually be a man to his sister and give her the ideal protection to help them stay in their good world, and this paid off so well.
Everything you need to know about taking care of Carly. I listed all of her allergies, the number for poison control.
She has allergies?
Yes. These are Carly's favorite foods, drinks, soups, and chowders.
Aren't soups and chowders the same thing?
No, there's a distinction. This is her homework schedule and the number for a good tutor because she's been having some trouble with science. Oh, and these are the vitamins she needs to take every day. I only give her the ones shaped like dinosaurs.
Why?
Dinosaurs are cool. Oh, she's really into drinking coffee. I always give her decaf without telling her.
What?
Nothing.
Another good instance is Regular Show, specifically the episode Busted Car. In this cartoon, Mordecai and Rigby are way too reckless with their golf cart, and unbeknownst to them, Benson confiscates it to the dealership many miles away. They sneak onto the trip, and when Benson inevitably sees them, he warns them that they are just asking for trouble, since they plan to cause even more damage with the cart than before. But they promise to take action for their mistake in hopes that they will stay off the verge of being fired, and Benson, with a little bit of time, agrees to this. After a series of mishaps, though, Benson snaps and gives them a pretty heart-wrenching tirade.
Now we're never gonna make it to the dealership in time. It closes in 30 minutes.
We're sorry. We didn't know it was daytime. There aren't any windows in the arcade.
Excuses, excuses. How am I supposed to trust you when all you give me are excuses? When are you two gonna learn that your actions have consequences? Consequences that affect other people, like me. Don't you two understand? I'm about to lose my job. You may not care about keeping your jobs, but I care about keeping mine. Because if I lose my job, I have nothing. Do you hear me? I have nothing.
They know damn well that they messed up, so Mordecai and Rigby rush to return the car to the dealership and make it just in the nick of time. Benson is still pissed, but decides against firing them since they indeed made up for their mistake despite all injuries, and thus they stay on their job for having learned how to manage a very devious situation like this. Having realized Benson's true colors, they wanted to be accountable for their wrongdoings and to keep their job, and thus the status quo. Mordecai and Rigby made the riskiest moves that paid off. One more example of the status quo being good is in the sitcom The Middle. In the episode Bad Choices, the roof of the Heck house becomes so weak that holes begin appearing, resulting in rain in the house, which then leads to a dishwasher flood. After a conversation with Bob, Frankie decides that she could take the family to Hickory Arms, a fancy apartment complex, as a seeming replacement home. By the explicit improvements over their own home, the parents decide to take it, but the kids immediately claim otherwise. So then Frankie and Mike hold off for a bit longer, and realizing that they've had so many memories in this house, having lived there for roughly 2 decades. While they still have time, Mike decides to fix the house a bit in case anyone does try to take new ownership over it. As he's fixing the roof, his neighbors come by and are immediately willing to help him, and thus this makes him and Frankie realize that this neighborhood is truly meant for them since they have the best friends possible, and thus they are the catalyst for maintaining the show's status quo. The Middle is a sitcom that had gone under the radar until about last year when Warner Brothers finally started putting clips on YouTube, and then shortly thereafter, Eden and Brock made a podcast dedicated to the show. As of writing this, they finished season 1 exactly. It's a show that really hits close to my heart, and I'm glad that it's getting a great sense of vindication. And seeing the status quo made me realize how I, and likely you, have a great support system that can keep us living life in a more fulfilled way than we had anticipated. So that is great positive material to finish off here. But I bet you're wondering, how can a show actually break away from a status quo? How can one show actually change? Well, there are a good amount of examples of cartoons and shows that indeed do this successfully, and I want to display them to you. When this event happens, it truly pays off and has great satisfaction.
This is naturally when a show escapes its norms and becomes something else. It's when things take a big turn for the show and makes things more exciting for us because there's so much more potential that awaits us. Starting us off is Victorious' 3rd season finale, Tori Goes Platinum. In a nutshell, Tori is offered a musical act for an award show, but her manager manipulates her into being an awful person and she tries to Charles Shaughnessy off. Yes, it's that guy. He instead chooses Jade as she was the next choice. As a laptop camera is set up by the other boys to watch Jade backstage, Beck and Tori get intimate, but she then intervenes saying that it's not right for her to date her friend's ex. Jade overhears all of this, and after realizing that all the torment that she's put Tori through, decides to call her up and restore her position on the stage, and announces this.
I can't do that to a friend. Or even to you.
Ultimately, Tori sings Make It in America, and everyone loves it. The broad audience, her friends, Jade, and even the record producer who was initially against it. This means that Tori has finally fulfilled her wish of being famous. However, as most Victorious episodes had gone, the reset button would be hit, meaning that the previous events would have been rendered useless and forgotten. But not in this case. Her massive success earned her an episode where Charles visits the school, as well as another where she sings the national anthem and goes on a talk show to sing another song. It shows that they wanted Victoria or Tori in real life to truly make it big, or rather, make it in America. But the show was cancelled after an unceremonious 4th season due to low music sales, so we never got to see them graduate, let alone become famous together, so that's one for the bad books. Another Nick Status Quo change for a double episode season finale is Rugrats 2021's Chucky Come Home for its 2nd season. Full disclosure, this is an exclusive to DVD episode as the reboot was taken off Paramount Plus, and most episodes got shelved to Nicktoons, and I made a video about how unfair this was because the reboot has grit. It's far from perfect, but it knows its potential. In this extended story, Chaz attempts a proposal to Kira, which is a story arc that we are fully seeing this time around, unlike the cut in Paris special a quarter century ago.
Kira, however, tells him that she wants a fresh start, but due to how broad this response is, and his generally anxious persona, Chaz believes that they need to start over, so he takes Chucky to move away into the city to their Aunt Linda, who, fun fact, is the same voice actress as Eliza Thornberry.
I'm gonna show you some lovely houses later. One of them is right next to Archie's puppy preschool. You left on the crust?
While they're away, Tommy wanders into the empty house and finds that a new family is attempting to move into Chucky's place, and while he enjoys his new friend Darce, he naturally misses Chucky. Eventually, after learning that Kira was indeed expecting Chaz to propose in the first place, the adults decide to set up a surprise for the couple by inviting them to a mini-golf course. After some adventure where turns to be not-so-subtle throwbacks to the old series, Kira and Chaz reunite and complete a proposal, albeit with a toy ring. Chucky reunites with Tommy as well, and they welcome Darce into their friend group. Finally getting to the point with an altered status quo, the next day Linda helps the fiancés get a new home, revealing that when Kira wanted a fresh start, she wanted them to move to the next level in their relationship, and now all is well. And amazingly, while Chucky is in a new home, it's the other house next door to Tommy. My favorite part of this special, though, is the bookend with Tommy and Chucky having a night talk on their walkie-talkies.
Chucky? Are you there?
Tommy, why are there so many stars in the sky?
So, aliens have a nightlight.
Oh, right. Richter was just wondering. Night, Tommy.
Good night, Chucky. Good night, Chucky.
Good night, Tommy.
Hey, Tommy. Hey, Chucky.
Hey, Darce.
How come there's so many stars?
So aliens have nightlights.
Oh, yeah. Makes sense. Good night.
It was a very nuanced way to change the format of Rugrats, as this version is more serialized than the 1991 show. Sure, it was a comfortable time to randomly flip on an episode of the original series that was episodic, but it's clear that the crew was taking a second chance in making their old gaps flow more naturally, and to get a new world with new places for us to be nostalgic for. Don't get me wrong, I still love the old show, but I feel like putting the characters in the present shows how well this property can be adapted. If the reboot was still stuck in the 90s, then there would be no real purpose of a reboot, if it would then literally be the same show all over. So changes had to have been made, like Susie and Kimmy swapping ages, or Grandpa being a hippie, although I like that one a little bit. Kids today deserve these characters because they help shape people like me up to be the best, no matter how old viewers can be. Now that I think of it, I could do a little project on how Rugrats has always been about nostalgia throughout its 3 decades of existence, but that's probably for another day. Just go check Rugrats 2021 out, because you and your kids will bond over what memories were made when you were infants. That's a great feeling. The most prominent example of serialization and their status quo is BoJack Horseman. I will admit, so many people made video essays about this show, including the particular season that I will be mentioning. People like Shafrilla's production, Shady Dorag's positivity. They're key in denoting this material way better than I will be, so here's what I have to say right now. Season 4 of BoJack is one of the best seasons of animation that I've ever watched, and it is a key season, an epitome of a status quo change. Big spoilers ahead. Throughout the show, BoJack is depicted as a nasty, egotistical, impulsive washout who just wants to make it out in life struggles, but his inability to admit those mistakes is a key hindrance in doing so. Now, to sum the season up somewhat quickly, after the death of a castmate, the titular horse drives far, far away, to the point where he has no idea what to do with his life anymore. But then he remembers the old home that his mother used to live in and goes there. And in there, we are greeted to flashbacks that juxtapose how Bojack and his mother, Beatrice, deal with grief. After a hugely heart-wrenching panic attack by his neighbor, who has a grief issue of his own, Bojack realizes that he must accept the death of Sarah Lynn to move on with his life, as he knows it was just as hard for his mother to accept the loss of her brother Crackerjack, and even harder to his mother's mother. Speaking of Beatrice, he reunites with her at her nursing home, ready to open up about the mistreatment that he endured from her, but things go awry when she gets a panic attack of her own from watching her son reenact his show, and thus he is forced to take her into his own home. At the same time, a teenage horse named Hollyhock tracks Bojack down, believing him to be her father, but he dismisses her until he quickly gives in to her attitude and needs, trying to stay on the status quo of bettering himself. There's another episode where he depicts his inner monologue and self-consciousness that is so cruel and vibrant that it really hits close to home, especially for those with big doubts of their own. Hollyhock quietly admits to having her own self-conscious, and Bojack assures her, albeit dishonestly, that it will go away. They just need time to process it all. So it seems that Bojack really is trying to improve a big series of mistakes. Well, there will be a hiccup in this. Episodes later, Hollyhock faces an overdose and is taken to the hospital. Her 8 dads drastically berate Bojack for his irresponsibility towards her and command him to cut ties with her, even when he admits it is indeed his fault and not looking out for her fully. Later on, we found out that Bojack was not responsible after all, as Beatrice sabotaged the coffee with weight loss pills, and Bojack snaps, taking Beatrice to a much more barren, bleak mental hospital. During the drive, Beatrice relives so many memories that she wishes to do without, including the fact that she was supposed to marry a fancy, competent goat named Creamerman, only to end up being married with a brash horse named Butterscotch, and through her flashback it's revealed that Butterscotch is the true father of Hollyhock, as he cheated on Beatrice with their maid Henrietta. When Bojack sets Beatrice off in one of the rooms, his mother finally recognizes him. Upon realizing the trauma that her own father put Beatrice through by a life of restriction and artificial nature, Bojack decides to make his last true conversation with her meaningful, albeit still depressing, by making her live a happy memory that doesn't exist thanks to her dementia. In the finale of the season, Bojack tracks down Henrietta and then goes to the 8 fathers to admit everything to them. They are initially reluctant, but when Bojack breaks down with true sincerity, the fathers, through their pig Latin-esque language, agree to let Hollyhock meet the mother and that Bojack can keep an occasional relationship with her. The next day, Hollyhock calls Bojack to thank him for his efforts, and she admits this very bold line to close the season.
A pretty chill experience.
I should have protected you. I really wanted to be a good dad to you, Hollyhock.
Well, turns out you're not my dad at all.
Yeah, good thing, I guess.
Yeah, good thing.
So, Minneapolis, huh? Did you rent a car or a cab?
Bojack, it's all taken care of. I gotta go.
Is there anything I can do? I can upgrade your seats or send you better fruit.
Bojack, look, I never needed you to be a dad. I'm going to be fine. I told you from the beginning I have 8 dads.
Yeah. Good.
But I've never had a brother.
Yes, throughout this 4th season, it appears that this status quo for Bojack was about to go 180. He went from a jerky horse to a jerk with a heart of gold. Seeing his progress was amazing, but all that I can say for the rest of the show is that the status quo will be changed once again, and one final indirect spoiler is that it will remind me of this poem by Shel Silverstein. There are no happy endings. Endings are the saddest part. So just give me a happy middle and a very happy start. The 2 seasons that follow will be doing another 180, but it goes to show that life goes on,
or time zero marches forward. And that's a big deal for me because there are other things that I want to bring up that surround me as a person. This is the part of the video that you can indeed skip if you want to, but there are a bunch of things that are lingering in my head, so I thought it would just be appropriate to get them all out. When it comes to my own mentality and beliefs, there are a lot of things that I want to keep in my head, even though some of them might not be right. One instance is that my old belief was that if you're nice to someone no matter what, they will be your friend. But over time, I've learned that there are a lot of harsh and inflexible people in the world, and it really went to show me that I simply can't please everyone. For every 10 friends, I would likely make one enemy, but I'm going to have to set them aside if I want to move on in life, or at the very least understand that they won't accept me, even if I truly try. Another status quo that I want to rely on is that people don't want competent employees for their jobs, and they want people who actually want to help them. So throughout my hundreds of applications for computer jobs and analytics stuff, I've been getting countless notes that say no, and I've been trying to understand how I could really go about expressing politely and vehemently that I want to be working in their jobs and show all the skills that I'm capable of for these companies, but I want to really show that I want to be a successful man without showing sycophancy. I just want to have a career filled with great strength and ability, and I need to find the right path to do that, but there are so many paths and so many of them are disappearing. Another more serious status quo is my tendency of cognitive dissonance. Like, when I've grown up with something, I've come to realize that I should be leaving it behind at some point, but part of me feels like if I do, I'll leave a weird hole in my head or heart, and that really had meant something to me. But I've come to realize that making a new task, I just have to fill it with another sense of maturity and grit, so I could indeed let this thing go, and not only necessarily fill it with something else, but try to figure out how to reshape some of these holes, so that I can understand how they can become holes to begin with, and I should thus go about learning other ideas, and the holes will shrink on their own. The next thing that I want to mention to you is my current belief is that I need to keep all my friends in a circle, but I realize that there are going to be clashing contradictions between person and person. And after all, a lot of things with friends are going to result in things like drifting apart. Inevitably, so to change the status quo, I've been trying to meet with a lot of good people and seeing how they can help me mentally and socially, because I want to try to find a way to help them in return, and doing so our friendships will be stronger and more appropriate for each other, and that really helps me stay mentally stable, and I want to become a good leader for other people who want to follow my steps. Finally, I want to mention that I have OCD. This is what makes me fall into unnecessary rituals, and one of them is my sycophancy towards others in hopes I can please them. But my overambitious attitude often gets the best of me, and my status quo of making new friends and by doing good deeds is thwarted by my own condition of taking things too immediately without considering any big consequences. Living with OCD is hard, and sometimes it comes with my own channel, because if I feel like if I don't upload consistently, the people that I admire seeing will tune out and my channel would be worthless. Now there will be inevitable end to the channel, but that will be after hopefully meeting someone special and someone that could understand me, and maybe I could instead post a community notice, and maybe that can be a slight alteration of my active channel status quo to keep occasional updates for everyone and keep in touch with all my fans. I appreciate those who listen to this portion, because there are a lot of problems that I have in my life, more than I would like to go in for this section, but I know that giving you an idea as bright as this is still enough for you to understand my issues and find a way to connect with me, and maybe I could find a way to have a successful life as an adult and find the right career and friends that will lead me to the best possible life. So let's finish off this video now.
We've seen the status quo as God in a lot of shows growing up, commonly when we tuned into Nickelodeon, whether it be something good and wise like Timmy undoing an impulsive wish of his, or something not pleasing like SpongeBob returning to the Krusty Krab despite how cruel and unreasonable Mr. Krabs is as a boss, or when Darren married Ginger in the end to keep his kind persona. And this one really stood out to me, because even if Simone had successfully seduced Darren with her condescension thanks to Miranda's advice, they're going to grow apart eventually, thanks to a 2-year age gap. And when Simone goes to college, is Darren going to be like, "Oh, I guess the distance makes our love more valuable, sweetie"? Of course not. Their love would never be forever. Darren left his jerky exterior to restore his status quo as being Ginger's soulmate. You might even be attached to the negative status quos in shows for older audiences, like Always Sunny, wherein the 5 of them stay awful with their stupid hobbies and interaction with strangers, or in how in another show's Constant, even if it's just a satire of Chris Rock's real life. And of course, Larry David will end up in the worst sticky situations in Curb Your Enthusiasm, no matter how good-natured he tries despite his own convoluted morals and hubris. But when we do have characters and their status quos, they better consider the consequences of having them, and I want them to have resolutions that are perfect for their personas, such that it leaves not only a good legacy for their show, but a rightful impact on the viewers. I mean, Disney, on the other hand, has its very own constant status quo of there is magic in all of us, and we shall take it with us everywhere to make our wishes come true. But after seeing that 100th anniversary movie, their status quo feels nothing more than a corporate method to keep people like us throwing in money when they know they're about to fall into a money sink. But when I watch some of these shows, even adult shows like The Office and BoJack, I learned that some people aren't meant to change completely. They shall keep their original status quo while making slight alterations to other aspects of their lives that will gradually affect other people for the better, and that we'd have fun along the way. Sometimes the shows teach us how staying on the status quo ultimately matters, like PBS Kids' Cliffhanger.
And that's why he's called Cliffhanger. Can't hold on much longer.
So it is controversial whether you want your characters to keep their reputations or trade them for ultimately better ones. It's a very tough question to answer. We've grown to know these characters for so much time, and seeing this come undone right in front of our eyes is a big detriment to our own status quos, because these are the kinds of people who we rely on to get us through in our lives. It kind of plays into the cognitive dissonance that I mentioned earlier, in that we must let things go to live a full life, and we shouldn't be holding back. We want to stay in our common cycle of life, but breaking through it makes us see more opportunities than we ever had. A movie like Pleasantville is an ideal example of this for its metaphor on monochrome and color, and it's one of my favorites therefore. Not only would I recommend you to watch that movie, but also consider how you can adjust your status quo if you want to keep most of it the same. You never know what's coming in life, so you better anticipate any big events that could be big changes in your life. So better look out on everything. Break the mold, but stay true to yourself. Thank you, stay well mentally and physically. I appreciate everything here.
Oh, cheer up, Clay. You've got a great family. You're an incredibly attractive guy, and your wife is automatically sexy by association. And Oral is one of the best long-distance runners on my team. Who cares if your second kid was a mistake and won't let himself be weaned? At least he's cute.
Yeah.
Don't worry, she'll never go through with the divorce.
Thanks, Danielle. Sometimes I wish I could put your brain in my wife's head.
Merry Christmas, Clay.
Merry Christmas.
What would you give him this Christmas? Give him a $20 gift certificate for Pizza Joe's.
Boy, God, this sure didn't turn out to be the best Christmas ever. But you still have 2 minutes left, and I have faith in you.